thing, right? Especially because it's literally everything.
No, they're not. You can come over as soon as this meeting's over.
Did you graduate?
On my vacation, I am Cinderella. Cinderella, all I do is dishes, brush beach towels, get sand out of beds, take care of like 10 grandkids that need all kinds of stuff. It is a shit show. Oh, family photos, took 300 of those. Oh my God. South Haven, Michigan, if you've never been there, you should just get in your car and drive there for the day and get out of your car and say, thank you, Susan. That's all it takes. It's 2 hours. The very first time I went to South Haven, I got out of my car and thought, I drive to Florida. I didn't drive here. Where's Scott Petey? Did he get married again? You know that's funny. That's cool.
Just go between 70 and 80,000.
That's different resolution that he sent us in our packet. See this? Well, Dave is
Finance?
none of us got it.
Special conferences.
You on finance before?
No.
Okay. Good afternoon, it's 6 p.m. on Monday, July 22nd, 2024. I'm Mayor Chris Martin, calling to order the regular session of Logansport Common Council. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
BJ Cox,
Present.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Present.
Susie Wamsley,
Present?
Dave Morris,
Present.
Cameron Austin,
Present.
Scott Petey,
Present.
Chris Howard.
Present.
All right. Old business, we'll start with ordinance 2024-17. Councilman Morris.
Ordinance 2024-17, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, rezoning property located at 1 General Street, Logansport, Indiana. Second reading. I'd move this forward for a vote.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I've got a whole bunch of questions for you. Come on up. Wondered, couple things I wondered about, is this certain, the narrative is just a part of what you're gonna send in with the actual application?
That is just one very small part of the full application. And I would be happy to send you a copy of the application once it's completed, which will probably be Monday morning.
Okay. Now, I've somewhat figured that, but I wanted to make sure. And I think it'd be nice if we knew what you sent in, so if you could send that to us, I think that'd be nice.
We'll be happy to.
You know, I don't know if it makes any difference to you, but there were a couple things in your summary that I just wanted to point out.
Sure.
You mentioned Patriot Park in there, and Patriot Park has been given to the Redevelopment Commission and is technically no longer a park. It's going to be, they're getting ready to take the playground down. That's the first step. So I'm just pointing that out. The other question, or the other thing that I noticed was you had Franklin Elementary in here, and it's not an elementary school any longer.
Okay.
But you could put Columbia in there, which is just up the street. and it's still in that same area that you're talking about.
Sure. Columbia Elementary, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess I wanted to ask you about the tax credits themselves.
Sure.
Because, like, one of the first things that we saw was a proposal that showed about 260 units. So now we're down talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 220. So how do they actually give the tax credits out? If you don't, I mean, you have to have it pinpointed when you apply, or is that number a moving target until we make the agreement with Huron, if you get them, or?
So it is a pinpointed amount. You apply for a certain amount of tax credits. There is a cap, the amount you can apply for. So in this case, we're basically taking it up to the maximum that we can apply for. The state is limited on the amount of tax credits it has on an annual basis. And then because it has such a limited amount of tax credits, it restricts each development to a certain amount so that they're spread across the state specifically.
So what is the amount then?
It's 1.3 million in tax credits on an annual basis. So it equates to 13 million total over the 10-year life cycle of tax credits. And then we take those tax credits and we basically syndicate them to a large bank or an insurance company that has a need for the credits. And so our pricing on there is typically about 85 cents on the dollar that we're actually able to get in equity to build the project.
And then so can you determine from that 1.3 up front
Yes.
how many units you're building?
We do, yeah. So it's all size based on that. So that's where our, the proposals we put forth here are based on the amount of credits that we can get per project. And so we have two different projects that we're looking at right now. There's two different types of tax credits, but they're both based on the amount of credits that we can get. And then future phases, we would look at, potentially coming back and getting tax credits for those future phases, or doing market rate trends depending on how the overall leasing goes to the property.
So this 1.3 that you're applying for is for phase one?
Correct.
And then, but I thought you said you were going to apply for both phases.
There's a secondary phase. We're probably doing two separate applications. So the mechanics of the tax credit program, there's two different types. One's called the 9% credit, the other's 4% credit. The 9% is the one that's limited to the 1.3, and then the 4%, and I know it gets super confusing, they change it every year too, which makes it even more confusing, is tied to tax exempt bonds and then state credits, which is a different allocation. The state of Indiana last year put in place a new state credit program. And so in order to maximize the number of units we're able to do at once on the project, we're utilizing both programs for application purposes. Because if we were to just do the 9% on its own, we won't be able to do 50 units. And so that's where we want to get as much done as possible, as quickly as possible, given all the work that's being done to push this forward.
So that leads me to my question would be, what if we saw your proposal after you got your tax credits and said, well, we think that's too congested, we'd like to see it reduced? Is that a possibility or not a possibility?
It's not. It's basically, we submit with, well, it is based on the overall site layout. That certainly can be changed. What we've committed to, though, from the number of unit perspective, IHCDA is awarding us tax credits based on the number of units that we're going to deliver. We are allowed to change the site plan, so if we went back to the city and said, this is what we're proposing, you're like, no, we don't like the way it's set up, that is certainly something that we can change. But we are limited to what we did propose. Again, if IHCDA gives us 1.2 million in annual credits, and we have to build 50 units, we couldn't go back and say, well, we can 40 or whatever it is. But the nice part is, it's a big enough site that we have some room to work with. We have the site plan that we have put together thus far, we think makes it as open as possible, not trying to not congest it, because we want the same thing there.
Excuse me, you said that you're applying for $1.3 million for 50 units, and this says that phase one is for 80 units.
Yes, we've had to change the overall structure of it to 50 units based on the tax credit requirements and how the overall sources and uses.
Okay, so phase one is going to be 50 units and not 80. Okay, and so are you applying for phase two at the same time?
Correct.
And how many units, first of all, what are you applying for at the 4% rate, and how many units is that going to be?
So on 4%, it's a different level of tax credits, but we are applying for state credits along with tax exempt bonds to go along with those to subsidize those. And right now we're looking at 72 units for that phase. So it is less, and talking from a congested standpoint as well. It's, we want to make sure that we're not putting too many units at once.
So then there's going to be more, you foresee more than 2 phases then?
Possibly, yeah. So a third phase, there would be additional land, and one of the nice parts of phasing properties like this is that you're able to kind of see what the demand is on the first couple phases and say, people come in, a lot more demand for 1 bedrooms, then the next phase would be shifted a little bit more heavily towards 1 bedrooms, like 2 bedrooms, we'd be able to target it a little bit differently that way.
So that kind of leads me to one of the other questions. I was thinking, and only because I don't know, you're talking about all these different phases, and you're talking about this transfer of land, and how is that, what if, I know that Bill still has concerns about it from Cleto's perspective. He's not here, he's on vacation this week, but I'm not saying he's not going to do it, he just has concerns also. So if we sign it over to Cleto, and then Cleto signs it over to you, how long do you foresee, if this is a 3-phase project, how long do you foresee this going on?
So the typical phasing for us, for the first 2 phases, we're probably looking at about 3 or 4 years to the point of construction, lease up, stabilization, and then the third phase in this instance would probably come about a year after we started on the first, not after, probably like 2 or 3 years in, we would do the second one. So the whole phasing process in this would be somewhere in the 5 to 6 year range, but we would be doing all of the cleanup work on the upfront when we're doing the first.
You're including that in your upfront timeline.
Yeah. So the third phase, the goal on that would be to make that as seamless as possible. Once the third phase, we already have funding for that, we would have already done the cleanup to allow that to progress.
And before you could start phase 1, you would have to have IDEM approval, and IDEM would have to show IHCDA that you've got their approval before you could ever start doing anything. Is that correct?
Correct. And we've done a number of properties that are in very similar condition, and a lot of times we'll work with IDEM on, we'll do building cap with specifications to ensure that there's no vapor intrusion into the building themselves, and they will do soil testing to make sure anything that we remove from the soils is tested and disposed properly, and the same goes for anything that we put back in. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Again, we're used to working with them to get that done. But I've actually dealt with much worse sites when it comes to environmental sites, dry cleaning sites as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've had a couple of those too. We have them all here somewhere.
The scale of things isn't
Yeah.
too bad.
What about, I guess the other thing that I wondered about is, okay, so now we're looking at a 3-phase thing. Where do you see the child care fitting in this development?
We would try to centralize it as much as possible. It would go within the first 2 phases as far as it getting put in, but we would try to put it in a central enough location so that it would be able to be as accessible from all phases as possible.
Even if you only are awarded one of the phases, either phase 1 or phase 2, the childcare would go with the one.
Yeah, it's going to be a component of basically no matter what on any of the phases. Yeah, so just a little bit more background, and I'm sorry, it's my first time at the meeting with you folks, so I'm not sure what all was conveyed in the previous ones, but on the scoring side of things, that's part of the whole process. Is a scoring, as far as that's all the projects that come in and ask for the tax credits get stacked up. It's all based on how projects score out, and how do the daycare is a scoring advantage. It is a very competitive program. I think the number of total applicants that went in this round is a little over 40, and they'll award about 15 in the state. And so Logansport actually stacks up extremely well this year for scoring. In previous years, because they change the scoring all the time, it hasn't previously. And so that's kind of where we're trying to put as much as we can to score as high as possible, because this is a really good chance to secure the position.
Are you referring to the breakdown on how they're gonna divvy the money out? Is that what, yeah?
Correct, and so those 40 applicants come in, and so we'll come in with our projects, and we'll score out a certain number, and say we score 100 points, and another project comes in and scores 105 points. The state will decide to give those projects tax credits over our projects because they score higher in the state's scoring system.
Right.
So having the daycare in there is a huge component to how we score this out.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was curious to see the final application, because, you know, you already sent me all the different categories and how you get your points, and just curious how you're going about.
Regardless, no matter what, the daycare will be coming, or the childcare will be coming, regardless of if it's 1, 2, or both phases at once.
Good. Is there a higher chance as you get into these, like, let's say you get the first 2 phases done, is your probability of getting phase 3 higher? You know, because I'm just thinking, you know, are you gonna get stuck if you develop this to where you got a chunk of land left and you never get phase 3? What do you get, you know, what happens to that piece of land? Or
It does make it more advantageous for us to do future phases. The state likes to see that. They acknowledge that resources have been put into the projects. The city supports those projects, and so it is beneficial from our overall appeal to the state agency as far as getting a future phase done.
At this time, you're applying for phase 1 and phase 2 on 2 different tax percentages, but the deadline is the same for both of those applications.
Monday at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Cancel it. 501.
It's out.
They will kick it back,
We'll
so.
take it back.
Okay.
We would have to wait a whole year to apply again, and then it would be under a whole other funding program, and we don't know what the competitive nature of those programs, if it's.
Sounds like you better meet your deadline.
We are pushing hard.
okay. That's all the questions I had.
Those were the same questions I had.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Scott Peedy,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-17 passes on its second reading. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, folks.
Thank you.
We
I need to be late to every meeting because that's the best meeting I've ever walked into.
Ordinance 2024-19, Councilman Austin.
Ordinance 2024-19, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, establishing Indiana Department of Workforce Employment Training Grant Fund, second reading. Mr. Mayor, ask for a vote on ordinance 2024-19.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Scott Peedy,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Dave Morris,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-19 passes. Any public comments? Anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment? Let's come to the microphone, state your name and address for us. All right.
Adam, isn't this where you want to talk?
On what, ordinance 2024?
No public comments.
Oh, yes,
Sorry.
sorry, thank you. I'm Adam Gorley, 2620 East Broadway, Logansport, Indiana. It was brought to my attention that the Broadway trees are in poor health. Susan Spencer had set up an appointment with the mayor on July 18th. We discussed it, which brings it to the financial committee here, and trying to see what we can do about getting some of these trees resolved as far as either removed, trimmed for better health, and just overall safety for the public. So I went down through there, and there's 43 trees on the Broadway. There's a total of 13 that are poor, hazardous, and should be removed. That's my own personal recommendation. I have been in the tree business for 4 years on my own, and prior to that, 6 years. So altogether, like I said, there's 43 trees on the Broadway, and there's 13 that are hazardous or in poor health that need to be removed. There's 19 in total that can be trimmed. The main ones we're looking at are the elm trees. They're the larger the trees. They have a lot of dead limbs, dropping a lot of branches. So altogether, if we were to remove all the elm trees and the poor health condition trees, we'd be looking at grinding the stumps also in order to be able to plant new trees in the future. We'd be looking at a total of $44,800.
Excuse me, what was that number?
$44,800. That would be removing 24 trees and grinding the stumps out on all 24 trees. That would be complete removals, all debris, brush away. The other, hi Aaron.
Didn't it also include trimming?
No, that one did not.
Okay.
So that was removing all the elm trees, so that's the larger trees that are ending their life cycle, I should say, or they're just very, very poor health. Very messy. I know we talked to the Parks Department, and they are in agreement with how messy they are and how much time it takes them to clean up after those trees as well. So the first proposal I have is removing the 24 elm trees and then any trees that are dead, rotten, or in poor health, along with grinding the stumps. That was the $44,800.
So you got 13 that you said were poor and hazardous, and then what, 11 elm trees you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And then 19 of those that would be trimmed.
And then there's 19 that are trimmed. So I have another proposal that would be trimming 19 trees. That'd be trimming all the elms that are still pretty healthy, trimming the dead out, along with a couple maples that need trimmed down through there. And then there are 13 trees total that were hazardous or rotten that would be ground out. That would be taken out, and then the stumps ground out as well. And I have $35,000 on that proposal.
Where are these trees located at specifically?
So they are at the start of the Broadway, which, where would that be? That would be
26th Street. 25th
Yep.
Street.
25th, all the way down to Spencer Park.
In the middle, or in the houses, or
No.
what?
Up, yeah, in the middle.
In the median,
Yep.
in the middle.
Okay.
Is NIPSCO still working in that area?
Yes, they are.
How long do they plan to be in that area?
That I don't
We
know.
don't have any info on that.
I did recently do a tree job last week due to the storms and worked with NIPSCO along with trying to stay out of their way. And I know they were ending down towards 25th Street. And I know they started at they started at Spencer Park. So I know they're coming to an end as of right now.
I don't know what Adam said, I'm sorry I was not here, but I just wanted to say how this all came about is I have been trying for years and years to remedy those trees on the median in the boulevard that are dead and dying. And I think one of the most important things to consider here is they are a real safety hazard. Somebody could get hurt, some person or something could get hurt. And then I brought it forward to the mayor, and the mayor graciously set up a meeting with all the department heads and was on board with bringing this to the finance committee. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I believe the Parks Department thought that we should just take out all the elm trees, because these elm trees are old. I mean, we can save them, but do you want to spend the money now, or do you want to spend the money later on those? So at this point, the only thing that I brought forth was the removal of those trees, not thinking it would go anywhere, because it hadn't gone anywhere before, but like I said, the mayor was really open to the idea, and I know Aaron probably might have something to say about what would come after.
Yeah, so I did some cost analysis with one of the landscaping firms in town on replacing trees as we're taking all those out. And then also how he does it is basically grinds it down and leaves kind of the remnants of the grinding down, so it's not reseeded or anything like that. So with the trees, adding back in trees, and I have on this estimate, I counted it earlier, now I'm gonna have to remember, 25, I think, 25 trees, was 12,150, and that can range, they're doing 2-inch calibers, and that can range if you want to change up the species. They're pretty close to being the same, each one being between $350 a piece.
What kind of trees?
There's a range of them. They have a lot of different ones.
Okay, different ones.
Yeah, like the red labels we were talking about are on here and different things. So they range from 300 to 350 per tree, basically at the 2-inch caliber. So that's where the 12,150 comes in. And then for basically fixing where the stumps would be removing the chip wood, replacing with topsoil. He's estimating 48 cubic yards, and then putting in grass seed, $7,460.
Good.
So I just want to give that since they were bringing up the removal.
Who's the landscaper that you're speaking to?
This is Spring Creek Landscaping. He's our actual only landscape architect. We have a lot of other CP groups that we can talk to.
Right.
You, couple questions. Could you do your quotes with us and?
Yes.
And could you go through and is it possible to mark all the trees that you want to take down so we can go out and take a look at them?
And I do have a copy here. It's an overhead view of the boulevard, and I went through and I marked 1 through 43, precise location of the trees.
Oh, so it's with your quotes and stuff?
I have a key of the name of tree, the species of tree, and then the recommendation.
Just so both of you know, this would be much easier for us if you would have had a printout of what you're talking about and you would have provided us with a copy of what you're talking about.
Yes,
Because
most
you're just sitting here talking numbers and we don't know what you're talking about.
I think it's more of just asking if you guys want us to bring this forward as an actual finance committee meeting.
I'd like to go out and take a look at it. And my next question to you would be, I mean, I know you said it needs to be done. Is this something that we could budget for and do next spring? I mean, is it?
We talked about in the meeting, we said it is.
Because we really don't.
So you may be asked to wait till next spring.
I mean,
yes.
I'm just throwing it out there to make life a
I
little.
think that you see, there was a few that you felt they were hazardous now, like you.
There were, like I said, there were 13 trees that were hazardous in poor health. Either they have cracks, or they have rot at the bottom, or
And they're marked on your chart?
they are marked on my chart, yes. Or they have huge limbs that are just dead, hanging there waiting to fall. And I know whoever cleaned up the boulevard after the last storm could probably justify some of the size of the limbs that were through there.
No, I've been down through there, and it is a mess, and I'm not questioning that some of them don't, or maybe all of them don't need removed. I'm really not, because it seems like every storm we have, there's
I just want to
debris.
make sure you guys knew there was a few that might, if they have the correct things, that you may want to take that one.
Yeah.
Does it cost more money if we have you just do the few necessary trees right now for 2024, and then we make a budget for 2025 to do the rest of the work? Is that more expensive, or is it is the?
No, it's not.
It's the
I
same,
tried
the
to keep
estimate's
it
the same?
Most as cost efficient as possible.
Yeah. And we wouldn't need to replace the trees
Not right
at this
now.
point right now. So if it was necessary to remove some, Dave, do we have a budget item for take down the trees?
Right now, off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but that's why I say,
Okay.
we can take a look at what we've got, take a look at what's out there, and if we can't get something arranged before the end of the year, we can certainly budget for it, because I
Well,
think.
Aaron mentioned something about the TIF district. What were you saying
Yeah, it's
about?
also in the TIF district, so I know it's kind of a hefty cost. They don't typically do maintenance, but, if that's something, that the council wants us to talk to, it is in the TIF district, but they typically say no maintenance, so.
Yeah, I know the trees and the maintenance and all that's been a question the last few years, so it's kind of shifted to us, but let us take a look at it, and we'll certainly, because
So
I
what's the
don't,
next step? What do we need to do?
at this point, nothing, just leave your material with us, we'll look into it, and, we're not even in a finance committee meeting right now, you're just doing public comments, so we'd have to run it through an actual finance committee meeting, like Susie's saying, where we get the information out to everybody. If we look at the budget, see if we had money in the budget we could move around or whatever to accommodate this year, and if not, we can just budget for it.
Do you want us to make you copies, or will one copy work? And
We can get copies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have his stuff, if not, I can get it from them, and I can send out all of it together.
Oh, perfect.
I have 2 hard copies, that's all.
Why
I
don't
got.
you leave?
She can email it to us, that'd be fine.
That'd be
Yeah.
great, thank you.
What's this?
Thank you for putting the time in. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Yeah, I have one.
Council member comments?
I have one comment.
Okay.
And I need to ask you guys, I guess. We were a little confused over this resolution. Do you need to have this resolution also passed before next Monday? Okay.
Ideally, we'd be able to walk out with the resolution signed tonight.
Yeah, well, there was some confusion on it. We got it late. First time we got it, it was an old copy. And quite honestly, I didn't see it again until Friday, so we didn't get it on the agenda. What we can do is I talked a little bit to Jacob. We could schedule a quick meeting for like Thursday, put the 48-hour rule in effect, make sure the public's aware of it, pass it on Thursday and get it to you. We can email it to you or however, but
Yeah, an email Thursday is fine. We just have to have enough time to get it signed and then get the PSA signed and then the assignment signed afterwards, which we can do all that on Friday.
Okay.
As long as we have, but nothing goes forward without the resolution, so we would need it by
Right.
Thursday. Yeah.
okay. Well, I apologize for that. Like I said, it was just kind of, first time I got it, I thought, well, this doesn't seem very helpful.
That's true. Absolutely.
So we'll get it to you quick as we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other council member comments? Miscellaneous business and any matters not already considered, including ADA Section 504 compliance or concerns. Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Call for question.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Scott Petey,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes?
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
You're adjourned. Have a great day.
All right.
Finance on for today at 6. And then
Finance is 6:30.
meeting.
$5.
All right, it's 6:35. I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. First on the agenda, we have Andy Mauser from Baker Tilly. We thought this was probably an appropriate time to kind of bring the rest of the council up to speed on where we are with the golf course clubhouse and how we might go about. No decision is going to be made, just some information tonight on how we might go about financing, assisting in the financing of the clubhouse as they collect their pledges. So Andy, it's all yours, buddy.
Sure. Thank you, Dave, and good evening. Again, Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. I'm a service financial advisor to the City and Redevelopment Commission. So as Dave mentioned, obviously no formal action tonight at Finance Committee, and then I would anticipate we would probably come back to an additional Finance Committee meeting before we come back to Council for formal approvals. I know in Dave's email, he had kind of outlined two options. Those were really two financing options that were provided by Ice Miller, who will be serving as bond counsel for the financing. But I can kind of give maybe just a quick run through tonight, 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then certainly happy to answer any questions. And then I think once we come back to Finance Committee in August, be glad to share some more formal numbers at that point. But essentially, for the clubhouse project, I'm essentially looking at about a $2.5 million project. And the Parks Foundation, I know, has essentially gotten $3.1 million in pledges across a 5-year period. The goal with any financing here would be that those pledges cover the full repayment for the clubhouse. Obviously, you need that $2.5 million on the front end for construction, and then those pledges would come in kind of gradually across that 5-year period. So what we would look to do is kind of a short-term financing, again, where those pledges would fully cover the repayment across that 5-year period as they come in, and then also would minimize financing costs as much as possible, make that $3.1 million essentially last as far as we can. Obviously pay for the $2.5 million, any interest that accrues, and then furnishings, any of the alternate bids kind of on the back end, just to make the project go even further. The city's portion, I know the city's committed the $200,000 a year for the 5-year period from your CEDIT, your EDIT, your economic development income tax. And there's been, I think, several commitments that have rolled off and kind of freed up some of those dollars. What we would look to do would be essentially have the city enter into a financing on the front end this fall, and then proceeds could be used for the project directly. So around the state, we see the build, operate, transfer projects are done a couple of different ways. They can either be financed by the BOT provider, the contractors, or they can be financed by the municipality. And I think there's a couple advantages to having the city enter into the financing and then make those proceeds available for the project on the front end. And then essentially invoices would then come through the city as the project's built, and then the city would own the project once fully complete. By having the city enter into the financing, it would allow it to be done on a tax exempt basis, whereas if it was done through the BOT provider, it would typically be on a taxable basis, so that should result in a lower interest rate. And then also by having the cities CEDIT behind it, again, should keep that interest rate as low as possible as well. We had talked, and I know Dave's been a part of some of those conversations about potentially doing a bond anticipation note. So that would be typically a 5-year obligation that's issued on the front end. It's repaid at year 5 by an issuance of long-term bonds. But then what we would look to do is as the pledges come in, the pledges would pay down that bond anticipation note, and then the city would never issue into a long-term bond unless there were issues with those pledges. In talking with the attorneys, a debt limit is a large consideration just for any municipality in the state. And that's for cities, towns, counties, schools. And so many communities have to issue through lease financing because of that. In order to do the bond anticipation note, we would have kind of been up against the city's debt limit, which is about $1 million currently. So obviously at a $2.5 million project would have been above that number. And then the Park District has about $3.2 million, but unfortunately the Parks statute doesn't allow for bond anticipation notes directly. So essentially what Lisa had put together is option 1 and option 2, and I'm sure she'll be available hopefully, at your August meeting to discuss that, would be 2 options that I think get us, really to the same place as that bond anticipation note structure. And that would be, a short-term 5-year obligation that would be repaid primarily from the pledges through the foundation, backed by the city's CDIT as a secondary obligation or secondary security, and then would be repayable anytime. So again, as those pledges come in year 1, the obligation could be paid down. Year 2, it can be paid down, and by year 5, as long as pledges come in as anticipated, then the obligation would be fully repaid. So the two options she has outlined there, really the only difference is the first would be done more as a traditional lease. The foundation would essentially pledge the pledges back to the city for repayment. The city would pledge its CDIT to the repayment behind the pledges. And then the lease could be paid off on an accelerated basis, so essentially paid off prior to its final maturity at year 5. And that approval process would require 1 or 2 meetings of the council for both the approval of the lease and then approval of the pledge of your CDIT to the lease. The second obligation would be kind of more of a traditional bond structure, but it would look much like a bond anticipation note. So it would be done through a park district bond. It would be a 5-year bond. And it would have that same structure as far as the security. It would also have a property tax behind it, but there would be no intent to ever use that property tax. It would just be there essentially as an extra layer of security. But similar, the pledges would be pledged by the foundation. The CDIT could be used by the city. The bonds would be prepayable at any time, and then that would require council approval, but then also park board approval as well. So very similar, with just a couple of small differences there. Again, having it callable anytime I think will be key just to help minimize the interest expense on the financing. And really, I think those 2 options look similar, again, other than the property tax backup on the second option, the additional park board approval on the second option. But those are both, obligations we could go to your local banks, and we could also go to larger regional, statewide, national banks that would typically purchase a short-term financing like this as well, and do that through a request for proposals process. And the goal would be that, again, as pledges come in, pledges would be used for the repayment primarily, which would include the city's CDIT, but under no scenario, would we anticipate going anything beyond the pledges or the CDIT, even in that scenario too, where it would have the property tax backup. We would never anticipate having to actually use that property tax backup. But then having the CDIT does give you, again, the best security on the financing, hopefully the lowest interest rate, and then gives you flexibility if there were issues with the pledges, if you needed to reprioritize the CDIT, then you've got the ability to, reissue or roll that to a longer term obligation as well. This may be the last point, and then certainly happy to answer any questions. This I think is a similar structure to what was done on the police station bond a couple of years ago. That was also payable from local income tax. That was your public safety local income tax, so not the economic development income tax, but also your local income tax. That was done at a 3.95% interest rate, and we had 6 different banks that had bid on that financing. I would hope in today's current interest rate environment, we'd hopefully be somewhere in the 4 to 4.5% interest rate. I think if this was done, as I mentioned, can either be financed by the city or could be done through a developer financing. I think that developer taxable financing would probably be more in the 6% or higher. So again, hopefully that'll, allow that 3.1 million. Less of the 3.1 million will be needed for repayment of the obligation, which should save you some money to, furnish the project and kind of do additional improvements on the back end. So maybe pause there, and certainly glad to answer any questions.
So in option 2, you're saying that with the added security of the property tax clause being in there, you think you could get a better interest rate?
I think they would be similar, potentially a little bit better. Typically, bond purchasers are going to look at a property tax as, the best security and lowest interest rate, but local income tax is right there with it. Really, the only reason we would have to pledge that property tax behind it is because anything payable from a local income tax is subject to the city's debt limit. Anything payable from that property tax levy could then be subject to the Parks District debt limit. So it makes it a little bit easier financing process through the Parks District debt limit and not have to go through the same lease structure. But I think interest rate wise, with the property tax or with the property tax and the income tax, we're probably in that low 4%.
Have any questions for Andy?
I have a question. So the pledges that are coming in for the golf course, what account are those being put into?
Those all, I think, currently remain with the
They're
foundation.
Foundation account. It is not subject to the city's, it's not within the city's money.
It's just in the Parks Department money?
In the Parks account, it's a separate private nonprofit organization account.
Okay, so.
The First Safety Bank.
Okay, so then, as those pledges come in, then we're gonna look at how much money is sitting in that account and how much money we're gonna pay towards this debt each year based on, as the pledges come in. Like 1 year, it might be higher than the next year. And are you gonna give 100% of your pledges to this debt every year?
I assume it'll be based on the actual, setup, whatever payments are set up, that's what we will have to work with.
Right, but if your annual payment is, $750,000, and you're sitting on $800,000 of pledges because of the way they came in, then we would just pay the full $800,000 on the debt to reduce it quicker, is that correct?
That's what is decided, I assume so. We'll pay what we have to pay, that's the goal.
Okay.
I think some of that would be then, kind of decided in the financing documents that then would come before the council, but that's kind of preliminary. Preliminarily what's been discussed would be, there would be a pledge agreement or MOU, something to that effect between the foundation and the city. So the city issues the obligation, but then the foundation.
Then they write an agreement, okay, and then, the only way that the city, that would ever come back to where we would be paying more money than we already obligated of the $200,000 a year is if the pledges don't get fulfilled.
Correct.
Okay.
And that would give you, I think, flexibility. Like I said, it's a 5-year obligation, but you'd have the ability to roll it into a longer-term obligation. So if, no pledges come in, worst case scenario, well, you've got your $200,000 commitment over the next few years, and, maybe at that point you've got $1.5 million or $2 million remaining. Well, then you could roll that into a longer-term obligation and continue to pay it from the seed at every year.
Right.
So it gives you some flexibility too, to make sure the pledges come in as anticipated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they actually, Susie, they actually worked on, and I'm not gonna say it's totally accurate, but, Matt Llewellyn and Chad Higgins and Kyle Smith have kind of worked on a spreadsheet that shows the donations coming in and when they'd have to start utilizing the bond and how it would all pay out. And I think Jan was talking about getting us an updated one to take a look at, weren't you? Well, that's okay.
It's like 5 pages long, and bigger than, it's a big document.
But,
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
I can email it to you, but I can't.
That'd be just fine. I can print it myself. You email it to me, I'll look at it.
Any other questions for Andy while he's here?
That was good information, thank you.
You're welcome. And like I said, I'll plan on being back here in, August once we're ready to move forward, and I'm certainly glad to attend Finance Committee and Council if helpful.
We'll let you know as soon as we have a date, Andy, on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right, Dan, you're up next, buddy. Dan's here to talk about the carousel.
Danny said Dan.
Dan, Jan.
Good evening. I'm Dan Williams, and I'm here representing your Cass County Carousel. And this is a finance meeting, so I'm here to ask you to consider helping us fund our dry for a new HVA system / humidifier. As you probably know, the horses are older than probably 3 or 4 of us put together, and the way they're made out of wood, and if it's too dry, the wood cracks, and if it's too wet. And this was built in 1995. We feel like it's held up real well, but it's time to replace parts of it. We've had some service calls that get pretty expensive. To date, we've raised $46,745. We were able to obtain a 2-for-1 grant from Eli Lilly through the Community Foundation, and the cost to replace the system that is currently in there is right at $150,000. So anything small, anything large that you would consider donating to the carousel, we would really appreciate it. I've been around quite a long time, and I have some knowledge on it, and I'm sure you have questions. So we can get right to it, and I'll try to answer them. If not, I'll get back with you in a personal email if you have questions that I can't answer.
I have one question. At the bottom of the letter, it said that the deadline was May 31st, I believe?
It's been extended.
Okay.
Good point, yep. To the end of August.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were getting
Yep.
the matching if we were doing it.
Looks like you've raised about 12,000 since the last time we communicated with you. So you're
I
continuing.
called in as of last Friday, it was $46,745.
The first email I got from you guys
Yes.
a while back said 34 in June something, so good to see you're still raising money.
Yeah, it's for a good cause.
So, and you need 70 to get the match, right?
Correct. And we're going to start next week. We sent some letters out to some businesses, and we're going to do some follow-up work
So it's extended till the end of what month?
August.
August, okay.
When you say you're going to do some follow-up work, are you going and seeing people in person, or are you just sending letters, and then what's your follow-up?
We sent letters, and then we called some people and asked them, you know, what, if it was in their budget or when it would be in their budget and what it would take. And these were business people that in the past have donated to the carousel.
Mhm. Do you have a list of the people that, when the carousel was originally built and it took $1 million to build it, do you have that list of people that you've contacted to ask them to once again give to the
We did,
carousel?
and a lot of them aren't here now.
Okay, but you have that and you're
Do
doing
have
that?
that list, yes.
Okay.
And that was in 1995.
Here's what I'll just throw out an idea for the council. Here's what I was thinking about. Dan, we'd offer you 10,000 if you could raise another 10,000. And that'd get you pretty close to the finish line, and, well, that'd get you up, you'd about that'd get you up close to 140. It sounds like you need a little bit more than that, but.
I'm sure we'll be able to come up with it.
But, that's a thought I've got. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a good investment. It's a great entertainment source in Logansport, and I'm fully supported. I would like to ask you, have you asked the county for any money for this
We
purpose?
did.
And how much money did they offer?
They said that right now they could not donate to it or give us money, that they would have to get it in their budget next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How much are you talking, Dave?
Pardon?
How much are you talking?
I thought if we offered, if they raised another 10, we'd match it.
For a total of?
Well, that'd give them another 20,000. If they raised 10,000 more dollars, we'd give them 10,000.
They need what,
That way,
70?
they'd work at it, and that'd get them up to
What?
66,007. You'd only need,
So then they only need to raise $4,000 to get, they'll get there.
No, they have to raise 14. And we'd give 10.
Where do we get?
No, I'm
the
saying
10
if they
from?
raise 10 and we give them 10, that's an additional 20.
Okay.
And they're at 46, that puts them at
Right, so they need to
66.
total, they'll do 14.
Right, exactly.
Where does the 10 come from, Dave?
we'd probably either get it from the rainy day, or I'd have to calculate how much is left. We have a little miscellaneous money of the council money. I have to look, offhand, I don't know what's in there.
Well, this is a cause that I feel like, in my personal opinion, I live at 1616 High Street, so I've raised my family at that carousel, and it's just a great asset to our city.
Thank you.
For it. Definitely.
What?
I said definitely.
Yeah.
You guys think you want to move that suggestion forward, or you got a different suggestion, or?
No, I'm good with that. Even, I don't know, could you bump it to 15, make it a little easier, or?
Pardon?
Could you bump it to 15, or?
Or 12.5?
Well, I can bump it to whatever the consensus wants. If you want to go 12.5, you want to go 15, that's why I just threw a number out there to get us started here.
Well,
So,
I think 12.5 is middle of the road, nice suggestion. I think that's middle of the road, and we don't, how about this? If you raise more than 12.5, then we can just give you what you need to get to 70.
well, if we match them to 12.5, they're gonna be over what the 70 is, so.
Okay.
So we start with the 10, see where that goes.
Well, it'd be easier just to have it all in one.
Yeah, it'd be easier just to do 12.5 in case it doesn't work.
You have to make a resolution and everything for it.
Can you raise 12.5, Dan?
We'll try.
Everybody in favor of 12.5?
I'd like to take it 10.
10?
12.5.
Chris?
I'm good with 12.5.
Cam?
12.5.
All right, we'll move 12.5 forward. The council as a match, and we'll move that forward as a match. It'll go through council August 5th.
Okay.
For a vote.
Thank you for your
Do
time.
you guys have a preference over rainy day or miscellaneous, depending on what our balance in miscellaneous is?
Let's hear the balances first, if you could.
I could send them out, and you guys can let me know. We can write it up both ways and determine when we vote on it. We can leave it blank and fill it in.
Did we say 12.5 or 10?
12.5.
12.5, Dan. All right. Very good. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, Mark, come on up, buddy.
You want music?
If you guys don't know, this is Mark Raycup. He is he's got his shirt on, so you know who he is. He's the Batman guy.
BJ's got to pull up on his phone.
I know. There you go. There you go.
Goodness.
Okay. Hopefully you guys all read what Bill sent out to you. Bill and I toured the place a while back. We're more than impressed with what Mark had done up to this point, and just felt like it, as you read the numbers of what he's invested in this, plus his business on top of that, and the attraction that it possibly could be for our community, we felt like it was time to step up and maybe help him get to the finish line. So go ahead, Mark, I'll let you kind of.
Sure. Well, what a perfect building for a Batman museum. It's a Tudor-style building, so it kind of has the bat-like look to it with the ears. And then in addition, the Wayne Manor was a Tudor-style building that was used in the TV show. So we started off by working on the ceiling, restoring and repairing, and then painting, priming and painting the incredible tin ceiling. Then we have sanded the floors with, and then stained in polyurethane those. Then we started working on the Wayne Manor study. You remember from the TV show, this is where the sliding bookcase is, and that will be part of the equation as well. And it's really coming along well. Then we've got a theater. I don't have a photo of that, but theater will be showing documentaries about the TV show, about the Batmobile, about our business, as well as Logansport transportation history. Logansport, as you know, has an incredibly rich history, and I definitely want that to be part of it, that this would be an educational place as well as the fun and the entertainment, and it's going to be an incredible draw. The next room, statues of Joker, Riddler, Penguin, Catwoman, and Mad Hatter, and these are not going to be behind glass like at some museums. I want them accessible, more like Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, so that you can stand right next to them for photos. Then we have some great collections that are going to be on display that are part of it. This is from a collector down in Evansville, Indiana, and he has a lot of rare memorabilia. We will have a Batgirl cycle on display. This is the world's first replica of the Batgirl cycle that's ever been made, and my painter, bodyman Ed Merrill, put that together. And the Batcave is in the bottom floor, and you want to talk about an eye-opener. This has attracted a lot of attention, and it does have bat poles in the back. No, people cannot slide down them. But the bat poles are there in the Wayne Manor study on the main floor, and on the bottom floor we have the Bat Cave, complete with the atomic aisle, and the Batmobile will be parked in front of that. People ask, do we have any screen-used items that are going into the museum? And the answer is yes. This is a Penguin jacket worn by Burgess Meredith in the 3rd season of the TV show. And this is one of 3 that exist in the world, and it's going to be right here in Logansport on display. I have a Riddler costume from one of the Batman reunion movies, and that will also be going on display. A lot of autographed items too. They weren't screen used, but autographed, so they're going into it. We missed, unfortunately, an opportunity. I restored the number 5 George Barris owned Batmobile. He did not build it. It was built here in Indiana, in Evansville, way back in 1966 by a couple of fans, but George Barris did end up purchasing this from the builder. Well, I did restore it, and he was going to loan it to me for 3 months. Unfortunately, that window closed when these delays came up that were required by the state and by the city, and the expense was astronomical. I ended up having to hire an architectural firm to draw up what we had already built, and that was very exciting. But I gave them all the measurements, I gave them all of the drawings and everything, so they had a good place to start. And then we had to rewire the entire building to bring it up to code, because we were no longer grandfathered anymore because they considered it change of use. So that is why the additional expenses came in. That was a surprise to me, of having about $20,000 went to the architect, and then an additional, right now I am at $19,231.82 with the electrician so far. So, and I've appreciated the fandom, I've appreciated the support of the city, and this, in many ways, is my saying thank you to the city and to the people of Logansport, because this is going to be a huge attraction. There's a superhero museum in Elkhart, Indiana, that draws in 10,000 people a year. So if we even do half of that, it's going to be incredible. We've already seen from our BatCons people coming from all over the country to come to our conventions. And we had 600 people come to one of our last conventions. One of them came from Austria, So they're coming from all over the country and all over the world to be able to come here for this particular event. And it'll be an ongoing thing for the city. So hotels, restaurants, other shopping is going to definitely be impacted.
If I have any questions for Mark? As you can see from Bill's explanation there, he has $75,000 left in his incentive funding, and he was suggesting that we consider $45,000 of the incentive fund to finish up his wiring and do the little things he needs to get done to get this thing moving and opened up.
That would be amazing.
Anybody?
Absolutely amazing.
Asking 45,000, correct?
Yeah, that's out of the incentive funding budgeted.
Okay.
Haley, you okay?
Yep, absolutely.
BJ?
I'm upset you didn't take me with you.
Yeah. You know what? Grab a hammer and show up at his front door, he'll let you in. But I'm sure that when the time comes, he'll be glad to
absolutely
let everybody take a good look at it.
What's your anticipation for opening the museum?
Well, as soon as we get the museum populated with displays, the next step is to bring in the building commissioner, the electrical inspector, and the fire inspector. And once they are satisfied, and the Lord willing, they don't find anything else that they want, then they give the certificate of occupancy. I don't know exactly how long that takes, but then we're ready from that point.
What is your occupancy?
That will be determined by the fire department but the estimate my estimate would be between 150 to 200 people at any one time.
Does it cost to get in this place?
There will be a fee.
Do you know what that will be?
Still working on that, but probably 15 for adults and probably 9 for kids. And then
they can come in and hang out all day if they feel like it?
they could.
Okay.
How many floors do you have?
2.
Just 2?
Cam, you good with it?
It's about.
I think it's great because, I mean, he has the only patent to make the Batmobile, and Logansport doesn't promote it. You know, like, I mean, I'm a car guy. I don't know much about Batman or anything like that, but I think the car is awesome, you know. And I'm just surprised that we don't promote that. We don't promote the Revere. You know, I feel like all of our parades, one of those cars or both of them should be leading the parade every time. You know, the Revere is locked away. You don't even see it. And we should really promote that. I mean, it was made right down there. So I think it's great.
How many cars have you built so far?
32 completed. And another 8 on order. So, who would have ever thought?
Yeah.
Crazy little old Mark and Logansport in Indiana.
This all started, he tells Bill and I when he was 2 years old.
2 years old in 1967, saw my very first episode of the show, fell in love with the music, the action, the color, the costumes, everything about it, but especially the Batmobile. And I said, I want that car, I want that car. And birthday parties from that point on involved capes as well as cakes. And I was 11 when my dad took me to Chicago to the Antique Auto Museum. I saw my first full-scale Batmobile. Turns out it was one of the original George Barris cars. It was the number 4 Batmobile. So imagine my surprise. That cemented the dream that I was going to build Batmobiles, or at least one anyway, for myself. And I built my first one at age 17. 5 crazy 17-year-olds, no automotive experience, no automotive tools. We willed the car into being from a 74 Monte Carlo. And then imagine my surprise about 20 years later when I get a phone call. Hi, this is Doug Jackson. I said, wait a second, the Doug Jackson, the owner of the number 4 Batmobile? You know your stuff, sir. I said, well, thank you very much. What can I do for you? He wanted me to restore the number 4 Batmobile, the one that I saw when I was 11 years old, and I got to drive it in downtown Logansport. Everything comes around full circle.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to build one?
Way too long. About 3 years on
How many?
average. 3 years on average. Pre-COVID, it was about 2 years to build each car.
Maybe you should get some more people to help you.
I wish that was the delay, but it's material delays
Oh, okay.
primarily. Custom-built chassis, trying to get the parts, drivetrains, LS3 Corvette drivetrains. So it's tough, but we keep on plugging away. We work on every part of the car that we possibly can. And
You had one out the other day driving around.
that's one that's going to go to Minnesota in just a few weeks. So, yeah, as I say, it's all over the country and all over the world. And people come in. We've had people come in from Australia. So they went to LA, they went to Las Vegas, they went to Chicago, Logansport to see the Batmobile factory, and then they headed on to New York. Why did they come to Logansport? There's only one reason: the Batmobile.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's Logansport's best kept secret. It really truly is, just like you were saying. It really truly is.
Well, it's time to let it out of the bag.
Yeah.
You good,
I think you
Susie?
should be a front page story. Let's go. I'm ready.
Chris, you all right with this?
Yep.
All right, we'll move this forward. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for coming and talking to us.
You bet. Thank you, folks, very much.
Thank you for your creativity, sir, and keeping it here in Logansport. We appreciate it.
You bet. Happy to.
I don't want one of your cars, though.
All right, well, I'll do a cheap imitation of Bill Cuppy here. We've got 2 tax abatement requests for Logan Stamping.
No, dear.
He sent all the information to you, gave you an explanation of them. I'll just briefly walk through them. He says, each one says it could possibly create 2 more jobs, although it doesn't say what the salary would be on here. They have, at the metal fabrication, they have 32 current employees. And if you go to the last page, it'll show you what the breakdown on the abatement would be. They're investing $2,369,000. The abatement would save them approximately $90,000 and would create an additional $47,000 for the city of Logansport over the next 5 years. And after that, each year, it would create $17,000 in additional taxes. Anyone have any concerns with that abatement?
What year are they in?
It's a brand new one, Scott.
Brand new one, okay.
Yeah.
Were they in compliance with the last one, all the way?
Yeah, they're in
Hiring,
compliance with.
hiring and investing and starting new lines, stuff like that?
Pardon?
Hiring new employees, starting new lines, and investing their money in compliance with what they're supposed to be doing at the last tax
They were
abatement?
at their last review, they were in compliance, yes. All right. And the second one is similar. Second one is in their other plant. They have 72 employees there and they expect to hire a couple more. The estimated cost for this one is going to be $7 million, it looks like, $187,000. Oh, no, I take that back, $1,471,000. Anticipated savings for them would be $56,000, and they would pay an additional $29,000 over the next 5 years, and $10,500 a year after that. Did anyone have any concerns with that abatement? Okay, move this forward. If you do have any questions, Bill will be here on the 5th to answer those. He said he'd write up the resolutions on these, the ordinances, I should say.
He
All right,
already
we'll
sent
move those
examples
forward.
for those.
Pardon?
He sent examples for those.
Yeah. All right, that leads us to Aaron, survey.
So, the mayor's office has been approached by some, different people that, do you have the map up there?
I think
I think they gave it to you, okay. About some property that the city owns, on Roselawn. In addition to that, obviously, the police have moved out of the building that the city currently owns. And there's actually a portion of the property that was with that property that Braves uses for parking. Any split, and then there's not right-of-way dedicated either, so that's kind of the blue, interest in the front portion there in yellow. The rest of the building and parking, and then the red is what Braves uses for parking currently. It does not have to be split like this, but I just kind of just drew lines just to have lines to look at. But any split that you do from this property other than the right-of-way would have to go through a subdivision process. So if you decided just to give Braves some parking, it's possible that we would need to go through a subdivision process if they ever plan on expanding and those type of things. They probably want buildable. So in doing that, I wanted to present to you guys what a cost would be to do a subdivision on splitting out multiple pieces of property for this. And I got an estimate. Well, I asked a couple other surveyors that I say surveyors some are cheap, some are slow, some don't respond. So I asked a couple other surveyors. One didn't respond. One said they didn't want to do it. It's in a reserve, which must mean a lot more extra work. And then I had RMA that responded and said it would be roughly $18,000 estimate. Now, I haven't gotten a full written estimate because that could change within 30 days and wanted to see if this was still something that the council wanted to do. So I wanted to bring it up to you, and then if we took it to a council meeting, I could get you an actual written cost estimate from him versus just an email from him. So it would have more of the typicals on that it's a 30-day and those type of things. So basically the interest is fronting Roselawn. Braves, again, I don't know if they know they don't own that or.
Well, I think they just discovered, because they were actually, according to Malcolm, because they're selling it under contract. He was paying taxes on it and found out he didn't own it. So.
Well, that's always interesting. But yeah, so, and then the other thing would be in doing this, you would also need to provide cross easements. Obviously, some people go through that to go to Speedway. Anything that you're doing in this area, even if you sell off the building as a whole without any of this, would also have to have some survey work done to provide those easements and the right-of-way dedication. So I just kind of threw together based off knowledge of some of the things, but if we wanted to go a different route on how we split it, we can do that as well. So somebody's interested in the actual building or in the yellow spot?
The yellow spot. And then there's some interest in the actual building too.
Well, what are they gonna build?
Well, you would still have to go through your whole process of things, so.
No, but what are they asking?
It's not.
They have interest in a franchise
Yeah.
chain, something that you find similar along that.
Yeah, it'd be commercial.
But they're not telling you what they wanna do? Or you don't?
There's something that can be like on the record.
Yeah, there's something, yeah, it's something that we don't say on the record.
Something that we say here ends up on Facebook as this thing is coming. All that we want to say is that there's interest from, at least one local investor that is saying that if they had this piece of property, they would put
Something there.
something there.
And you're asking for $18,000 to get it mapped out?
That would be for all of this, so I'm saying that if you're gonna do it for the interest of Braves, or if you're doing it for the interest of the old police station, or if you're doing it the interest of the yellow, no matter what, you're gonna have to go through this process, so I just put all of them into one estimate.
We can use the Eastgate Fund for this.
That was.
Yeah, I mean, the Eastgate Fund, there's an Eastgate Fund that has probably $400 and some thousand in it, specifically for this area, so.
Well, what happens to Braves if you tell them that's not their parking?
Well, the city would be able to, if you didn't want to give it to them, then that's a question, I guess, for them. Or if you're asking them to buy it from you, that's probably a question for them. But if you're willing to give it to them, I don't know that there's too much of an issue.
Didn't own their parking
So they only own the building and what's in front of the building, so
They knew that, correct?
I don't know if they know that currently or not. You're saying that they just found out that they didn't own
According to
that?
Malcolm, they just found out, they had been paying taxes on it and then found out somehow, I don't know why they were looking at it, maybe because they're getting ready to transfer the property, but realized they didn't own that area.
They can't be taxed on it if they don't own it.
Well, they've gotten that straightened out, but
I think that they looked at what is new asphalt versus what is old
That's where
asphalt.
you can kind of see probably what they thought they owned.
Yeah, because you can tell where they put the new asphalt in versus.
I see, okay.
So anyway.
Braves did that, not the city.
But we didn't want to offload the Eastgate building to whoever, and then they tell Braves, you can't use any of this, and all of a sudden that restaurant
doesn't have any
has real parking.
Well, this place doesn't need that parking. You can do something else with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that would be my, if you can get us a good estimate, Aaron.
Yeah, so he gave me 18,000, that was in May. So I'll just get him updated one, but that's why I initially asked to say 20,000 just because, you know, that always seems to trickle up within a couple months. So, but I'll give him a full estimate. And would you be bringing that forward to the next meeting, or you want it, an actual estimate for another finance meeting?
Well, if it's in the range that you're talking, I would be in favor of moving it forward. If it's some astronomical number, maybe we need to.
Yeah, no, I'll ask him to do a formal proposal.
Yeah.
That's just what he gave us in May, so hopefully it's not too much more.
If you get something in the next week, so we could.
Okay.
Right. Well, you should tell him that you've already been in front of the finance committee meeting and
They'll only do 18.
they're considering $18,000, so it'll be within the limit. I mean, that's easy.
I can check.
Is everyone okay with moving this forward and using the Eastgate
Yeah,
fund?
that's great. But I want to know what's going there.
Find out a couple hours.
Hey, that's, Susie, that's one of those deals you find out that it's not so much we don't want to say as most of these companies don't want to say. Because if they change their mind, then it's like.
Or if we do
It's
the
even worse for
RFP
us
for
to-
it and they don't get it.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of process to it, but our thought is if there's interest, there might be more people interested, and so this would be a good location to possibly split out and be able to provide. Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, Jan? Not Dan, we're looking for Jan. Jan for the transfer request.
So, we have, I guess, 5 different transfers is what we're at, or to complete 5 different transfers. Well, I guess it's maybe 4. We have, money that we are requesting to do seminars and training, so that, our staff can attend the Indiana Parks and Recreation Seminar in November, plus, a playground safety inspector class in December for one person. That cost is almost $3,000 for the four people to do these classes. The master plan printing, they're 500 pages apiece, so they're not little booklets.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
Jan, did you not get any printed copies of that with money that it wasn't part of the deal that?
No, that was always gonna be something we had to do on our own, so, anyway, we figured out, we have some money in printing, and I guess I was hoping to print, 8 extra copies, just to have on hand, because once you print them, you don't want to mess with them again, but they're, from Accords, and this is their lowest rock bottom price. He said it's our rock bottom price, and Mike, he said, give them the best that we can do, and they're $57.50 a piece.
He also said they're not making any money off this, so it's like.
Right, that's what he's saying. Mike's not making any money off of this. So what I want to do, I was thinking I wanted to do 30, but I want to do 38 so that I have extras to give to new people as they come on board at the Parks Board or the Foundation Board or the council, as it were. And
You're
then,
making 38 copies, not?
yeah, 38 copies. And then I want to do 1 3-ring binder so that we can copy pages as we need to for whatever reason.
Oh, so you're only getting one of those, not 30?
Yeah, I'll just get 1 3-ring binder.
Are the rest coming like
And the rest will
bound,
be
or-
all spiral bound, yep. And coil bound, I guess the coil is what it, he used that term, so. And we checked, I asked the master plan firm if they could find some better prices, and none of them were this low. So, anyway, so that's, and I have asked for $2,500 transfer for that. We want to do a Live United Day project with different volunteers to help put mulch or playground mulch on Melbourne and Fairview and another, I can't remember what the other park is, but each truckload is $2,500, and it's 1 cubic yard or 3 cubic, I can't remember what the number
You're
is.
gonna do Melbourne?
Huh?
Melbourne?
Melbourne, yep.
Isn't that one that we're?
Well, we don't have any, there's no immediate
Oh,
plans
okay.
or anything to go there. We actually just removed Patriot Park today, so there won't be anything going there, except we did keep the swings, but we took everything else out, so. And you know, it's one of those things you have to keep putting it on. You can't just, and it has to be maintained at a certain level to be compliant with safety regulations. So we did Bishop Park, we've done Mulehausen Park. We had to do that totally when we rebuilt that playground. And then we put a new layer at Spencer Park on the south side. So we've already spent $10,000 on that, on playground safety surfacing this year so far, so. And that was our budget for that, so. And then, I hope you haven't heard any complaints about the park's, restrooms, but I haven't heard any complaints, and that's because we've really been working hard with a hardworking staff at making sure those restrooms are in top-notch condition as best as we can. And
I've heard some complaints about that.
oh, you have? That they've not been doing it?
Pardon?
That they're not doing it?
No, that the restrooms are nice, but the smell.
Oh, well,
You have vent fans, exhaust fans in those?
some of them, there's a couple that don't.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one at Riverside with a squealing eel.
That's Riverside. We just put one in, I don't know, a little bit ago.
I went in there and it was terrible.
Oh, you
I
thought-
waited for my wife to come out, people were coming out gagging, because
Oh.
the heat and everything. You know, it needs to have an exhaust fan.
Okay.
If we can budget you some more money to get those put in, I'd support that.
Well, that wouldn't be this,
I
but,
understand, but during budget time, if we can come up, we can get some money going towards something like that.
Mhm.
Because, all the other were compliments, nice park, looked great festival, the restrooms, they just were terrible.
okay.
If we could put an exhaust fan in that and get it going to where they would have a all good experience, it'd be great.
Okay.
Keep that in mind if you would, please.
That's the first I've heard.
A couple people have told me.
I knew somebody would say something.
Everything was nice, but the restrooms, when I went there, it was terrible, so.
So anyway, we're down to just, I don't know, just $119 in that fund. So we think we can make it the rest of the year with the $1,500 request that we're asking for here, so.
Dan, I wanted to ask you, up here at the top, you got it. You want to transfer $2,817 out of heavy equipment to seminars and training, and then $205 from the mower line item. But the question I have is, just last month, you transferred all your money out of seminars and training.
Well, we had to pay, and I knew that was coming. And we had to pay for additional money that required on the master plan. It was an additional 2243 that we had, and I didn't have any place else to transfer to get that bill paid.
Where did all the extra, why were we?
Well,
we had
part of
budgeted
it,
for the
part of it
master.
had to do with the reimbursables that we had to take care of for their printing of the big plans for the big planning meeting that we had there at the end. So that was part of that cost. We had to take in all their travel. I believe they even spent a night here.
And you didn't know you were going to go to these seminars a month ago?
Yes, I did, but I didn't have any other place to transfer money at the time to get that bill paid.
Okay. And, I mean, I'll tell you, Jan, did you use your heavy equipment? Did you buy something with your?
Yes, we did. We
What
got
did
that
you buy
taken
with
care
it?
of, and we'd got the mower taken care of.
What piece of equipment did you buy with the heavy equipment fund?
I believe it was a trencher.
Trencher?
That attaches to the mower that we bought.
And that would, so this is the balance you had in that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I really have a problem with the dump, taking money out of the one-ton dump truck.
Because you're actually taking $5,000 out of that fund.
Not only that, but you just sent me an email saying that's one of your top priorities, a one-ton dump truck. And you got $50,000 sitting there in that fund, and now you're gonna use it for mulch in the master plan. And the email you sent me with your priority list for next year lists the one-ton dump that we budgeted for this year. You don't have anywhere else you can take that money from?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now.
And you bought your pickup truck, right? So this is leftover money for the pickup truck?
Yes. Well, and we did buy a second pickup truck this year with the one-ton dump money. And so that we won't have to buy a pickup truck next year.
So you bought two pickup trucks
Yes.
instead of buying your one-ton dump truck?
Yes.
Okay.
You're not buying new trucks, right? You're just buying used trucks, or are you buying new trucks?
Yeah.
Yes, what?
Yes, we buy used trucks.
Okay.
And the one-ton dump that we want to buy is going to be used as well. But it was closer to 75,000 than it was 50,000 to get that.
Is that what it's gonna cost in 2025?
Yeah.
How much, did you say $75,000 for a one-ton, a used one-ton? Okay.
Yeah. You know what, if you don't want us to do that, fine, we won't, we'll just go ahead and not do the, we won't do the extra playground.
Now, if you've already spent most of the money on a pickup truck instead of a dump truck, go ahead. You know, I won't object to it, but, you know, we talked at the start of the year about using these capital improvement funds for what we designated them for, Jan, and it's okay. You guys okay with these transfers?
Yeah, and I do want you to know that I personally spend a lot of time cleaning, and I buy a lot of cleaning products, and they're very expensive. So I can't imagine trying to buy products should, you know.
Well, I don't, you know, and I don't even have a problem with that one, the sanitation.
Okay.
With the leftover money for the pickup truck.
Okay.
But it does, you know, we set these, you know, we go through this every year. We started the year out, you budgeted for a roof at Penman, and the next thing you know, we were up at the pool. And I mean, we should know, most of these things we know in advance, Jan, and when we plan for them, I don't understand why we get off course, I guess. But I'm okay with them all. You guys want to move these forward?
Yeah, I vote to move them forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about using a rubber mulch? Is that cheaper or more expensive than regular mulch?
It's not as, we haven't used it because it doesn't stay in place very well. It gets easily shifted around, and it's hard
I know
to.
there's different types, but like the playground mulch they have in that little kid place over on Burlington Avenue, they have, it's different types than the rubber mulch you see in flower beds.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm not sure. No, we've never used it because it doesn't stay in place is primarily the main reason we don't use it, so.
Okay.
And it's important for it to stay right there. And also, kids get really dirty on that.
That's what I was gonna say. Rubber mulch is really dirty. Like, if you take your kid to the park and play,
Well, the stuff they got over there on the south side is blue.
well, then they're blue. Your kid's blue instead of black.
Not my kids. Just a.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think it's any cheaper.
All right.
I don't think it's any cheaper, so.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody's in favor, we'll move these forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the end of our Finance Committee meeting at 7:36.